Good day to you, King of Kings family. This is Beyond Sunday Sermons, our weekly examination of the Sunday message at King of Kings, where we get to dive a little deeper and discuss some further thoughts on the message. I'm Dan Hoppin, the director of Connect Groups at King of Kings, and as always, I'm joined by Caleb Heck, our director of Kids Ministry. Caleb, how you doing?
Hey, it's good to be with you, Dan. Welcome back to the podcast. It's great to chat and follow up this Mother's Day weekend with this. So
I was going to say, before we get started with the podcast today, we're recording this on Monday, May 13th. So yesterday was Mother's Day. Yesterday was your wife, April's first Mother's Day as a mother.
Yeah.
So how did that go? What did you do to honor her?
Yeah, it was good. Just gave her basically the day to relax, which is what she wanted because she takes care of our little one. She stay at home with Olivia, and so the big thing she wanted me to do was to cook her a meal for lunch, and so I made her. One of her favorite meals when we go out to eat is chicken parmesan, and we don't really make it at home, but I was like, I'll figure it out. So I looked it up, and I must say, I think I did a pretty good job with it.
I saw pictures of this on Facebook, and I was like, I gave you a little golf clap. I was like, all right, Caleb, I see you. You got some cooking skills, man.
The chicken was perfectly crispy. I think the trick for me is always just to put way more cheese than necessary on it.
More cheese usually doesn't hurt unless you're lactose intolerant. Then it might not be so great.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into this message because this past weekend, Pastor Zach Zehnder kicked off a new series called Asking for a Friend, in which we're going to attempt to answer some questions that are really challenging for Christians. And the first question that Zach tackled was, how do I deal with all this stress? And I don't know about you, Caleb, but I can't really relate to this question. I'm just totally stress-free at all times. I assume you feel the same, right?
I don't think that's quite the honest truth you're going for there. I'm the complete opposite. So
yeah, no, same. This one was very relatable. As soon as I saw the title, I was just like, well, that applies to just about everyone. And Zach actually had some stats that confirmed that. So, I mean, we know stress is an epidemic today, and more so in America than in a lot of places. In fact, Gallup ranks America as the 7th most stressed nation in the world. And particularly here in Omaha, we're really stressed. I was actually kind of shocked by the statistics that Zach rolled out, courtesy of the Barna report. He said 77% of adults in Omaha say they feel significant stress at least once or twice a month, compared to just 61% of adults nationwide. So I don't know if we're just more honest in Omaha, if there's like an underlying anxiety in our city. I feel like Omaha usually makes like those best places to live lists, and like it seems like we're pretty easygoing here in the Midwest. Did that number surprise you?
It did, actually, a little bit. Yeah, I agree. I think I saw a list lately that had Omaha as one of the best places to live. But I don't know what they take into account for that. So I had that statistics highlighted too, because it's amazing to think 77% of people in Omaha feel stress every month.
Mm-hmm.
I know I do, so I'm part of that number.
You're one of the
I'm one of the
3 out of the 4.
Yeah. But I don't know what it is about Omaha in particular that makes it so much high. I can picture it with just America in general, because we're very much a stressed out nation, all about our work, and we have a lot of different topics that are heavy on our minds, I think.
Well, I think something that can be even more stressful is like when you feel stressed, but you have to like put on that Midwest, nice face and just like act like everything's all put together. That only like increases the stress inside. So maybe there's something to, something there. But regardless, let's get into our big question. What's going to last in this message beyond Sunday for you, Caleb?
Yeah, I think what's going to last for me is I love that Pastor Zach gave practical tips for challenging us for how to deal with stress. And the questions that were asked in here, the ones that really stood out to me, when you think about how you can choose your hard is one of the phrases he used. So we all do hard things, I think, but what stands out to me is like we get to choose how we respond to that, what hard things we do, maybe what we can put off to the side or do later and to kind of prioritize. And I've been thinking a lot about priorities lately. I wrote a blog for the King of Kings website a couple of weeks ago about my priorities between work and family, especially. So I think that, it's cool to think about, when we have our priorities straight, that can help really to reduce our stress.
So as Zach is challenging us to choose our hard things, what are some hard things in your life where it's just like, yep, this is hard, but it's necessary and I need to have this? And what are some hard things that you were able to kind of examine or maybe even came up in your mind as Zach was talking about them where you're just like, I really don't need that. If I let that go, my life would be easier and less stressful.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that Zach talked about was we tend to kind of overload ourselves a little bit and we try to do too much. And so being able to eliminate some of the things that aren't super necessary, give ourselves a little bit more time to accomplish our goals and those kinds of things. So for me, it's like I have a lot that I like to do. Now that I'm a father, I love playing with my baby. I love spending time with my wife. We watch a lot of TV though. And I'm like, I could probably cut back on some of the TV that we're watching in order to be able to do other things and not feel stressed when deadlines are coming or I've procrastinated too much because I'm watching my favorite show instead of doing things I should be doing or spending time with my family, stuff like that. So I think that's a big part of it for me.
Yeah, there's a weird balance, I feel like, when it comes to kind of comfort activities like that. Because Sarah and I, we typically watch something during dinner and then we'll watch something at the end of the night, like before we go to bed too. And so sometimes I think about that and I'm like, that's like an hour and a half probably each day, probably a 40-minute show for both of those times. But at the same time, it's also time spent together where we are like, we're talking about the show and because we watch food shows. So we talk we talk about what the contestants are doing and stuff. So it's like, it's time spent together and like, it's good to unwind. So part of me, like, it's that weird balance between like, part of me thinks, this is helping me de-stress, but at the same time, I think there's something to what you said. That time that we're spending there isn't time spent, cleaning up for a Connect group to come over or training our dog better or planning to, what's the word I'm looking for? Renovate the bathroom. And then when that stuff does come up, all of a sudden it is more stressful. So there's that weird balance. And I think that's what makes life tough sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially when it's like a work-life balance.
Yes.
Between work, family, I'm finding out, raising a baby now, like it's a tiring job. and to be able to prioritize, okay, here's what really needs to get done is super important. And I think Pastor Zach talked about kind of 3 key areas where people feel stressed the most, and that would be in relationships and then with your time and with your money. And I feel like I've gotten better with the time one over time.
Nice.
And then relationships, like I've definitely gotten better there. I think for us right now, for me, it's money. It's how can we spend our money wisely and save, after having a baby and trying to pay off student loans and those kinds of things still. So money's a big stressor right now. And budgeting has become, more and more important for us with that.
And Zach talked a lot about budgeting and the importance there. How have you seen that play out in your life?
Yeah, well, sometimes we budget for things a little bit loosely at times, but when we're like, okay, this month it's really become like we need to make sure that we can get the food that we need and not put it into Lego. That's my go-to.
Mm-hmm.
So he's Pastor Zach said you cannot buy everything you want to buy, and you have to say that to yourself. So we kind of do like, okay, we've maybe done a little bit too much. Now it's like this month we're really going to focus on, not eating out as much, or, cutting something out that isn't as important as
Whoa, are you saying eating out isn't as important as
I know I'm saying this to the wrong person.
Oh my gosh, wow. That's the number one priority, man. Nah, I'm just kidding. Kind of.
Kind of. No, yeah, but it is important to prioritize with those things, and think about how you can eliminate stress. And I love the question Pastor Zach asked, to boil it all down. Is it wise?
Mm-hmm.
Is it wise for us to be spending money going out to eat, or spending money on the new Lego set that I want? And that's my thing. But when I was thinking about that too, it's pretty important, the James passage, and we just did our whole series on James. So it was pretty cool to actually bring this back in with the James 1 verses 5-6 passage that says, "If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind." So if you feel like you don't know how to make those wise decisions, or as it says here, you lack wisdom, ask God, talk to God about it. I think that is where you want to start.
As I was thinking about it, I was just struck by the simplicity of that question. Is it wise? And how many it sounds ridiculous that big decisions could be answered with that, but I really think so many times the answer to that question is pretty intuitive. Like, is it wise that I spend a bunch of time on my phone at work? Probably not. Is it wise that I buy a $300 Lego set? There might be a time and a place for that, but probably not consistently. Is it wise that I go over and see my parents and make sure that they're doing okay? Yes. I think in a lot of situations, if we just stop, think about what we're doing, and ask ourselves that question, we're usually going to come to the right place, I feel like. And sometimes it is more difficult. There's no question. Like the verse from James that you just read. I think sometimes, yes, we need to get into the Word or get into prayer and really wrestle with God and kind of hash it out a little bit and try and figure out what His will for our lives is. But honestly, I think so many times if you just boil the decision down to those 3 words, is it wise, you're going to know the answer pretty quickly.
Yeah. It's funny because that phrase reminded me of a quote from one of my favorite TV shows, The Office.
Oh, yes. Gotta love The Office.
And if you're familiar at all with the character Dwight Schrute, he's a very interesting character. And one time in this show, you probably know where I'm going. He says,
would an idiot do that?
Yeah. Yes. Before I do anything, I ask myself, would an idiot do that? And if the answer is yes, I do not do that thing. I mean, if you boil it down to it, think, is this really smart? Is this wise? Am I being an idiot?
Yeah.
Maybe you don't have to use that language, but it is a good idea to be able to take a step back and think, okay, is what I'm doing really wise?
Taking advice from The Office. Usually not probably a very good thing.
Well, that just proves I watch too much TV.
In this situation, but look, it's paying off for you now.
I guess so.
This is proof that TV is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned Zach talked about those 3 practical ways to reduce stress. He boiled it down to relationships, time, and money. Those are the 3 main stress causers. You talked about money. I think time is pretty intuitive. Like, no one feels like they have enough time.
Right.
There's just not enough hours in the day. Although I think if we actually realize how much time we spend watching TV or on social media, I think we'd find out we have a lot more time than we think. But the other one is relationships. And that's one that has been challenging for me at times because especially with just all the relationships that I have through my side hustle and the food podcast and everything, like I have a lot of people that want a piece of me and I have a hard time saying no to people. And when Zach said, decide ahead of time who gets to be in relationship with you and at what level. And he said, you can probably only handle 5 to 10 like significant relationships in your life. Like that kind of caused the hair to go up on my arms. I was just like, I got to cut all my relationships down to that. But, and, maybe not everyone needs to do that, but I do think that there's a lot of wisdom to that you can't be everything for everyone. I don't remember if that was Zach's exact quote or it was something similar, but he used the example of Jesus, and I thought that this was perfect. Jesus obviously wanted to be accessible to everyone, but he had 72 disciples. He had 12 apostles that he really focused on, and then he had those 3 core guys, James, John, and Peter, that he really poured himself into. So yes, Jesus was available for everyone, but he also intentionally selected individuals that he was going to be closer with than others. And I think that that's something I can probably use to prioritize in my life a little bit and reduce some of my stress when it comes to relationships. I found a verse in Proverbs that I really liked, actually. Proverbs 12:26 says, "The righteous choose their friends carefully, but the way of the wicked leads them astray." And then I just loved the next verse. "Anxiety weighs down the heart, but a kind word cheers it up." So it's just like that moves so beautifully from talking about friends, and then the very next word was anxiety. And I don't know. It's really hard to not be anxious when it comes to relationships. It could be a contentious relationship with your mother-in-law, or does my boss like me? What can I do to improve that relationship? Like, relationships are a major stress causer. Is there anything that you've done in your life that you feel like has, because you mentioned relationships aren't a huge, like, they're not your number one stressor, at least. Is there anything you've intentionally done to reduce relationship stress?
Yeah, I think in my life, like, I've gone through different phases. Obviously, like, through high school, I think I was trying to fit in. And then I get to college, kind of started out that way until I found my kind of niche group that I clicked with. And then even since then, some of those friends have stayed, some have not. And I think for me, being okay with letting certain people kind of drift to the peripheral has helped me to not feel pressure to like have to do it for everyone. I think for me, it's a little bit harder sometimes with work because, I mean, we do have a large staff here and we have different departments, and I've got a lot of volunteers that I work with and the team and everything like that. And to have to think about, okay, who am I investing in? Like, whose questions am I answering directly? Like, how am I going about this? Can be a little bit more, but I think it works for me in a way where I just am able to say, okay, like, boil it down to what is most important and who, like, do I need to spend the most time with working on something too. So, and then I think it's been super awesome for us here at King of Kings to get connected in our Connect group and to say, hey, okay, we left a church behind and maybe lost a few friends there, and we're still in contact with some people, but to come in and say, we're going to be intentional too about, like, who are we going to spend time with here at church? And I think who you choose to be around helps to kind of shape who you are. And I think we found a pretty good group. So.
Well, I know Sarah and I say this in all sincerity, we feel honored to be a part of that group of people that you guys do want to invest your time and resources in, and we feel the same about you. One last thing before we get out of here is Zach kind of boiled down, like I said, he boiled down stress to relationships, time, and money. Honestly, I think there's a fourth one that I would want to introduce, and I think this is probably the biggest stressor in Sarah and I's shared life, and that would be the future. Just the unknown is very stressful. Like, for Sarah and I right now, we're trying to have a baby, and it's proving to be difficult, and that has caused a lot of stress between doctor's appointments and thinking about how this affects our budget, and we've always thought we were going to have kids. Are we going to be able to have kids? We don't know. But it's not just that situation. It's how long are our parents going to live? What can we do to help them? What are we doing for the resale value of our house? Are we budgeting enough to I guess this kind of falls into money, but are we budgeting enough to make sure that we're good for retirement? Jobs. Do we want to stay in our current jobs? Do we want to look for different? Like, the future is just something that is constantly, I feel like, pressing on our shoulders. And I was really encouraged as I was just kind of preparing for this and looking up verses. Lamentations 3:23, great is his faithfulness. His mercies begin afresh every morning. And I just love that kind of that thought of the daily reset of every morning you wake up, you get breath in your lungs, and you just have an opportunity to make of that day what you want. And that doesn't mean that we can't or that we shouldn't look to the future and make plans, because we absolutely should. It's important to do that. Like you mentioned, budgeting your money. That's really smart. Thinking about your relationships and prioritizing them. That's really smart. But I think it is also important to just kind of have that reset and remember that God gives us fresh blessings every single day. And yes, it's good to think about the future, but also focus on the good stuff that he's giving you in the present, right here, right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. When I worked at a summer camp in college, a phrase that was introduced to me that has always stuck with me is be where your feet are.
Oh, nice.
And so,
I love that.
Yeah, you think about, I mean, I used to always be living in fear of the future for the most part, and that phrase kind of helped me to transform. Okay, where am I today? What am I doing today? What can I worry about today instead of worrying about for tomorrow? And so that be where your feet are has really helped me. And to know that Jesus is right there with you wherever your feet are has been super important.
That's really good. I appreciate you sharing that. I'm going to steal that one. So as we conclude this podcast, I don't want to minimize anyone's stress or anxiety or anything like that as you're listening to this. And I'm not going to pretend that just asking the question, is it wise, is going to make all your stress and anxiety go away. Sometimes it might increase your stress and anxiety in the moment. But I think the more that we can be intentional about thinking about our relationships, how we're spending our time, how we're spending our money, that can reduce stress in the future. Ultimately, it comes back to reliance on God.
Yeah.
If you trust God that he's got your best in mind, it doesn't mean that your life is going to be easy, but it does mean that it's going to be worth it. So that's what I'm going to take beyond Sunday from this message. Anything else before we get out of here?
I think it's a good place to wrap up. And I would say if you are really struggling with stress, just talking to someone about it helps tremendously. And we do have the core counseling here at King of Kings. And if you need someone to talk to, I've gone to counseling myself before. There's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It's just a great opportunity to talk through your stress.
Absolutely. Could not agree with that more. King of Kings family, let's keep living our faith lives beyond Sunday.